Magandang araw. Annyeonghaseyo. Welcome to the 5th Philippine Koreanist Congress plenary lecture. I'm Mark Ista from the Department of International Studies of Far Eastern University, and I'll be your moderator for today. This year, UP Korea Research Center is conducting a core research project under the overarching theme, A Decade of Korean Studies in the Philippines, A Glance at the Past, A Gaze at the Present, A Glimpse of the Future, granted by the Korea Foundation. And as part of the many initiatives of the UPKRC today, as we participate in the 5th Philippine Koreanist Congress, we virtually invited Dr. Gyun of Seoul National University, Graduate School of International Studies, to give a virtual plenary lecture. Dr. Gyun is a professor of Korean Studies at the Graduate School of International Studies, Seoul National University. He previously served as the Dean of the GSIS SNU 2020, from 2020 to 2022.
Hello, can you hear me? I cannot hear. Can I start? Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. Actually, I cannot hear what the Dr. Isla said. Is here on the screen. Actually, your microphone is not working. So.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know the how the Dr. Isla introduced me, because I cannot hear anything. So I will start. Okay. It is my great honor and pleasure to have a chance to have a talk for the specialist in the Korean studies in the Philippines. I was the UP twice. Probably the last one is 4 years ago. I really did miss the Manila and the UP. And thank you very much, Dr. Beck, who organized and invited me as the speaker in this very valuable meeting. Okay, actually the title of my the presentation is the Beyond the Legacy of the Palace, a rediscovery of modern Korea through the connectivity with the world history. Actually, I had a very similar presentation the last May at the Romania. Actually, there was a very interesting meeting. The five the European universities, they held in one place, in particular the professors and the students in the Korean studies program. Actually, I had a chance to talk about how to teach Korean to the European students. So actually, Korea is very well known due to the K-pop or the K-culture, but still, except that is still very unknown. So I would like to explain which way is better to explain the Korean issues to the students and sometimes to the professors. So the reason why I had this presentation here for the specialist in the Philippines. Actually, now, would you please turn off the microphone? Actually, here a little windy.
Oh, but he's new. No, ulit yung volume down lang. Hindi pinakaman. Yan.
Okay. Still noisy. So, would you please turn off the microphone?
Alis ko. Mute lang. Yan. Screen lang natin. Hindi mo siya marinig.
No? Yes. Oh, no. Still noisy. Can you check what I upload memorandum? The private chat? Can you check? 배 선생님,
네.
네, 그 호스트의 마이크로폰을 좀 꺼주시겠어요?
예,
여기서
지금,
울려서.
지금 괜찮으세요?
아니요, 지금도 그래요.
Because of the YouTube, I think.
그러니까 그쪽에 아마 호스트의 마이크로폰을 꺼줘야 될 것 같은데요.
지금 괜찮으세요?
지금도 좀 울리는데 그냥 할게요. 오케이, I will. I'm starting. Okay.
Mute to. Tapos mag-YouTube.
Okay, I introduce myself very briefly. Actually, I'm in charge of Korean Studies program, the GSIS, and also we have several Korean Studies program, and I'm responsible for that. And I'm very interested in the 계속 안 좋은데요? 소리가 아까 괜찮았는데 이상하게.
Kuya, off down pa daw. Volume down pa. Volume down.
Sir, volume down.
괜찮으세요?
예, 괜찮습니다.
예.
Okay, and my publication is mostly about the modern Korea and the Korea's foreign relation, and I love animals. That's the very brief introduction to me. And today's the content of list of the presentation is first one is transitioning Korean studies, and the presentation on the four issues. One is tributary system and division of the Korean Peninsula, the economic growth, and the Korean wave. Actually, the Korean studies, we have the several times of transition. Actually, during the Joseon Dynasty, the most of intellectuals, then most important there, the Bible was the Confucianism. So they always stress how the Joseon Dynasty, they inherit the Confucian authority. So all of the history or social issues were interpreted by the Confucianism. However, when Korea was colonized after the 1910 until the 1945, the Japanese imperialists, they changed the perspective on Korea. In particular, they stressed the stagnation and dependency of the Joseon Dynasty under the Joseon Chinese Empire. Actually, the Joseon Dynasty lasted the more than 500 years. It's very longevity. So the Japanese, the scholars and Japanese imperialists, they argue that the Joseon had no capacity to modernize by itself, and they define and consider the Joseon Dynasty as a predatory state. But after liberation, for the Korean scholars, their mission is how to recover the pride and self-respect. And actually, the Japanese, they distorted and skewed the issues and fact of the history and Korean issues. So actually, the scholars, they try to find the capitalist profit and the semi-modern bureaucracy system during the Joseon Dynasty. This kind of effort after liberation by the Korean scholars to prove that Korea could modernize by herself without the Japanese assistance. So that is to find recover the Korea self-pride and the self-respect. And however, the international scholars after 1980s and after 1990s, actually they have different idea. Actually, before 1980s, there were very few the international scholars majoring in Korean studies. But after 1980s, actually, they pay attention to two things. One is that the Korean War. Actually, the Korean War is one of the two hot wars during the Cold War. So, for example, the Professor Bruce Cummings at the University of Chicago, he published a very famous book, Origins of the Korean War. And the other important issue is the Korea's economic growth, particularly very rapidly and effectively. And that's from the 1960s. But actually, the international scholars in the 1990s, they pay attention to the Korean case. This is very exceptional compared to the other developing countries. In the Western world and the Soviet world is the same. For example, the Eastern European countries, actually the regimes were collapsed before and after 1990. And in the case of the free world, think about the Latin American countries and other Asian and African developing countries hardly achieved the economic growth, while the South Korea and the Singapore, Taiwan, and the small countries in the East Asia, they achieved the economic growth rapidly and effectively. So they pay attention to how those countries achieve the economic growth. And then the international scholars, they would like to build the Korean studies as an independent field. So in the title, I mentioned the James Place. Excuse me. Okay, thank you. I heard the music. What happened? Okay. In the title of my presentation, I mentioned the Professor James Palace. He was the professor at the University of Washington. He passed away 10 years ago. Actually, he's a teacher of the Professor Duncan, UCLA, Professor Eckert, Harvard, Professor Cummings, University of Chicago, and Professor Shin-Gyu at the Stanford University. So he and the students and his groups, the major group in the Western academia and American academia in the Korean studies. And actually, you would like to find the uniqueness of Korea, which is different from the China and the Japan. Actually, when the Professor James Palace, when he studied in the United States, actually Korean studies not separate the discipline. Actually, Korean studies was a part of the Chinese studies and Japanese studies. So he would like to build the Korean studies as the independent discipline or independent program. So he tried to find Korea's distinction compared to China and Japan, and he paid attention to the hierarchy system in Joseon Dynasty. As you know, actually during Joseon Dynasty, there are 4 classes: is the Yangban, the ruling class, and the middle class, who were the technicians, chiefly lawyer, the medical doctor, or translator, and that's the second group. And the third was the common people, mostly they're the agricultural peasant. And the last group is the lowborn class, including the nobi, which is a slave. So the hierarchy and dependence in particular to China. So because of those systems, actually his conclusion is that the Joseon Dynasty was stagnated, and the Joseon had no capacity to modernize by himself. But I think that now we have to pay attention to other issues. We have to overcome the negativities, because now already the Korean studies is built in the very separate and independent field in the international area studies. So the first one thing is that the developing countries were unique in comparison with the Western world. So mostly our historiography or perspective is dominated by the Western ideas. So compared to Western ideas, scholars, the Western oriented scholars, they usually think that these developing countries' histories, issues, events are either unique or strange or different from the very universal one. So always they think that the Western cases are the universality. But we first of all think about which one is more universal between the Western world and the developing countries. Actually, if we think about the number of countries in the world, actually the developing countries are the more than the Western world. The world history is dominated by the Western scholars. Actually, their cases are just from the several countries in Europe and the Japan, Japan in Asia, and the United States. That's it. But the developing countries, there are the more than 200 countries in the world. Which one is more universal? And also, I think that the 19th century, both groups, as the global South and global North, it means that developing countries and Western world, they had been interconnected within the empire. So now I think that we have to escape from the very Western-oriented perspective. So that is, I think, that the first one. And also, we have to find universality in the developing countries' history and issues. So that's the reason why I did make today's title is the connectivity with the world history and world issues. The first one is the tributary system. Actually, the tributary system is primarily as a way for China to establish and dominate the foreign relations with the neighboring powers, but it also served to legitimize the rulers of tributary states through their relationship with China. So actually here the powers that China consider more civilized than others, such as Korea, Vietnam, and sometimes Japan, were more involved in the tributary system than other states. So actually, the Korea and Vietnam were the very representative of the neighboring countries who belong to the tributary system before the 19th century. But not only Korea and the Vietnam, sometimes the Mongol and here sometimes Japan and other neighboring countries, they were within the tributary system. So actually, as I mentioned, the Western scholars is this kind of tributary system is very unique in East Asia, and through that they always think that the Korea was a part of China, and also because of that, the Korea and Vietnam were stagnating. But I have another idea because I found another the cases in the other region. For example, 19th century, there was one very interesting intellectual bureaucrat, Gyun, and he is one of the very modernized intellectual in the late 19th century in Korea. It's during the Joseon dynasty. So his one of his argument is that the Korea should be neutralized. Actually, at that time, not only the Qing China, but also the Japan and Russia, they would like to annex or colonize the Joseon dynasty. So that was the really crisis, the Joseon dynasty. So so many intellectuals and so many bureaucrats, even the Korean monarch, the Korean king, would like to find a way how to overcome this kind of crisis. And one of the way to overcome those crises, they believe that is Korea became the country of neutrality. So nowadays, the Switzerland, Austria, they are the neutralized country. Actually, there's no the alliance with the others, and actually a lot of the international organizations are located in the Switzerland and Austria. But at that time, very famous the neutral countries were Belgium, Bulgaria, and the Gyun, he paid attention to the Bulgarian case. Actually, the Bulgaria belonged to the tributary system by the Ottoman Empire since 19th century. And also the Bulgaria located near from Russia. So is Bulgaria. Just here, I'll show you. This is the green part is the Ottoman Empire, and the Bulgaria is located here. And this not only Bulgaria and the part of the Romania, they were the tributary country of the Ottoman Empire. And here is the Russia. And Korean case from the Gyun's the perspective is very similar to the Bulgarian case. Actually, Korea was the tributary system with China, but at the same time, Korea was very near from the Russia. But at that time, the France, England, and Deutschland, is Germany, they recognize Bulgaria as a neutral country is because they would like to contain the Russian power in Europe. So on the one hand, the Ottoman Empire still is very strong. But on the other hand, the Russia is very near from the Bulgaria. So they would like to check the Russia's expansion in the Europe. So this is very the same. Actually, the Korea was in the tributary system of China and near from Russia. At that time, Russia, they would like to expand their power to the south. So they would like to have the warm water port, which is not icing during the winter time. So they would like to have one of the Korea's port or the Darien in the China. So the European powers at that time also, not only in the Europe, but also in the Northeast Asia, they would like to check and contain the Russian power. So you can believe that the Korea could be another model of the Bulgaria. Of course, it's not the possible at that time. It's because the Japan was too strong to recognize Korea as the neutral country. However, what I want to emphasize is actually that kind of the tributary system was not just in the East Asia, but just in the Middle East and in the Southern Europe. So this is, I think, a very, very universal system in the international order. And at the same time, I would like to talk about the Cold War period after 1945. So the Cold War period is not so different from the tributary system. So tributary system actually, the small countries, they provide the tribute. Tribute is the gift. It's gift to the Emperor of China or Emperor of the Ottoman Empire. And at the expense of that, the great power empire protect the small countries like the Korea, Bulgaria, the Vietnam. So Cold War system, actually the US and the Soviet Union, they are the control tower in the First World and the Second World. And actually the US and Soviet Union, they asked the small countries to follow their own systems. For example, a country that obtains loans from the World Bank must agree to adjust its economic structure, liberalize its economy, and increase its international financial accountability. Moreover, the paying of the debt from the loans often leads to balance of payment difficulties for the recipient, further sustaining and deepening its economic dependency. So actually, the no gift, there's no tribute. However, the small countries, they have to follow the principles, regulation, which was made by the United States and the Soviet Union. And at the expense of that, the US and Soviet Union, they protect the small countries in the first world and the second world. Actually, this kind of argument was already is made by a very famous scholar in Britain several years ago. So actually, while the Professor Pallet, he stressed the importance of the tributary system when the scholars understand the Korea's uniqueness before 19th century. But I think that that's not the uniqueness. Actually, that is very universal, the system in the world. So I think the Philippines also is after the 1945, even before 1945, actually, the Philippines was the colony of the United States. And even though the Philippines were occupied by Japan for about 5 years, actually before Japanese occupation, actually United States, they promised the Philippines independence before 1940, and after 1940, Philippines was liberated. But actually, the Philippines belongs to the first world, and this is, I think, that the very universal one. Understand the Korea's the conditions not only pre-modern period but also after 1945. But why this kind of universality happened? So actually, every country they worry about their survival and their independence. In particular, small countries always they're very worry about that. And some small countries, first of all, share the border with the great powers. Always they worry about the great powers expansion. And another countries like the Philippines, even though Philippines does not share the border with the great powers, the Philippines locations are very, very important. The Philippines had the Pacific Ocean, and the upper area is the Okinawa and the Japan, and also the Philippines are very near from the Australia and the New Zealand. The very important location in the case, the Philippines also worry about the independence and survival. In that case, actually, every country is, according to the international relation theory, every country should select one of them, one of the balance of power, and the other is the bandwagon. But usually, the balance of power theory could be adopted in Europe, where the very similar national capacity, the countries, the coexist in one area. In that case, in order to survive or in order to compete, the country they would like to make the alliance or the union with other countries in order to make the balance of power. So this the painting shows that. So England or other countries they have the union, while the Spain, France have the union for the balance of power. But in that case, actually, there's no is dominant great power. In that case, so many countries there, but their national capacity is very similar. Under that condition, this kind of balanced power is possible. However, like the East Asia, is the China is only one great power, and other countries could not overwhelm the Chinese power. And the before 19th century in the East Asia, actually Ottoman, the empire is very overwhelmed the great power, and no countries in Middle East the win against the Ottoman Empire. The America is also now is in the American continent, as America is only one great power, and others could not. So in that case, actually, these small countries usually they selected as their the strategic bandwagon. The bandwagon is like this picture. Actually, this bandwagon could not go without the main body. So its bandwagon is like another terminology is a free ride. So only connect with the main power, the bandwagon could move. So actually, this is another kind of the strategy of survival of the small countries. So Korea, even I think the Philippines, the other countries, actually this is I think that is not shameful. This is very I think that the wise strategy for the small countries. So think about the South Korea and North Korea. Actually, North Korea they bandwagon the China and the Soviet Union. And how about the result of nowadays? While Korea and Philippines they selected the United States rather than the Soviet Union and China. So both areas had the different the result. So any country they bandwagon the which country. That is, I think, the very important thing to understand those areas. And the second issue is the division of the Korean Peninsula. And this picture is, as you know, the summit between the United States and the North Korea. It was in 2008 in Singapore. And this is, I think, the really unbelievable event is because the U.S. Doesn't want to recognize the North Korea as a legal regime. Because of that, until 2018, no American president met the North Korean leader. But Trump, he is very, I think that really he is unique. And he's from the business. Most of the American presidents are from the Senate or Congress or the governor of the state, but actually the Trump. Not from the senator, he's not from the congressman, not from the state governor. Instead, he's from the business, in particular, the real the estate. So very, very, I think that the unique characteristic. However, he met the Kim Jong-un means that the U.S. had to recognize the North Korean regime as this party to communicate. But this is one thing. But another is that this is the event in the 2010. Actually, the North Korea they shot a bomb on the South Korean islands, the Yeonpyeong Islands, located in the West Sea, the Yellow Sea, and near from the border of the North Korea. So now is South-North relation on the one hand is getting the better compared to before, but at the same time, sometimes have very serious problems there. Is the provocations by North Korea, the conflict by between South and North. So actually why this kind of the division problem is not the solved yet. Actually, there were the three the divided country since 1945. So one is the Germany. Actually, Germany they unified in 1990. So collapse of the Berlin Wall, and the Vietnam so unified in 1975 as a result of the Vietnam War. And of course, we can think about the Austria. Austria was unified and became the independent country in 1955. It's very long ago. China still is divided by the Taiwan and the mainland China, but actually, China never recognized that as the division. Even the Taiwan people, they never wanted to unify with China. So that's the exception. But the case of Korea still is divided. But I think that the first most important the question is why Korea was divided instead of Japan. Actually, in the Europe, the country who were divided were the Germany and Austria in 1945 at the end of the World War II. The reason why those countries were divided is because actually it is kind of the penalty the war crimes. Actually, Germany started World War II, and Germany committed a lot of the war crimes. Actually, they killed so many people, and they illegally occupied the France and the other areas in the Eastern European countries, and they actually attacked Russia. So many Russian soldiers they were killed. So it's war crime. And Austria is the last country of the Germany. So four countries: Britain, America, France, and Russia. They divided the Germany and Austria is by four. But actually, in the case of the France and Britain, they could not participate in the partition of the Germany and Austria, so they mandated their area to the United States. So as a result, Austria and the Germany they are divided into two. But actually, the reason why they divided the Germany and Austria is kind of, as I mentioned, is the punishment and the penalty. So, in that sense, actually, in Asia, the Japan was the war crime country during the World War II. In that case, the U.S. should divide the Japan instead of Korea. But actually, Japan was not divided. Instead, Korea and Taiwan, Korea and Vietnam were divided. Why? So I think that the most important reason is that during the World War II, there were two different wars. So the World War in the Europe and that in Asia Pacific was different. In the case of the Europe, actually the US and the Soviet Union, they are two actors, main actors in the Europe. While in Asia, actually United States is only one of the main actors. So after the war in the Europe, the United States should discuss and consult with the Soviet Union. That's the should, they must. But in the case of Asia, America did not need to consult with the Soviet Union. It's because the Soviet Union was not the main actor in Asia. So, because of that, after the World War II, the America they issued the General Order Number 1, and through that the Korea, some part of China, and Indochina, they were divided. But most important thing is still why Korea, why not Germany? Not only the war, but the reunification. The main problem is, I think, that the China issue. So in the case of the Europe, actually, the East Germany, they were supported by the Soviet Union. But Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. While in the case of China, still, China is a great power still. So the China support the North Korea, while actually Soviet Union there disappeared. After that, the East Germany they collapsed, and automatically Germany were unified. And in East Asia, still China is the very big power. Actually, they support the North Korea, and North Korea still has not collapsed. So still, that's the reason why Korea is not yet unified. And I think that this kind of the division would last it for a while, is because the Chinese power is not the falling down. Is still Chinese power is rising, in spite of the lot of problems in China inside. As nowadays economic problems due to the U.S.-China conflict, and some political issues, just because the longevity of the Xi Jinping regime, but still China had maintained a very strong power. So that is another very important variable to understand the East Asia's international order and the Korea's division. And third issue is growth in Korea. But why other developing countries could not achieve economic growth rapidly and effectively? Actually, we have to think about two things. The first of all, the one is that the geopolitical characteristic of the Korean Peninsula, but at the same time, we have to think about the internal dynamics. So its geopolitical one is like the Philippines and the Taiwan or the Japan. Actually, the Korea located in the very important the location. So geopolitically, the Korea was the front line during the Cold War period. So actually, the U.S. they support the South Korea not only the militarily but also the economically. So from the 1950s, actually the U.S. provided the huge amount of the assistance to the Korea. So 1950s is mostly military assistance, and Korea plays a role as the buffer zone in Northeast Asia. And I think that North Korea is saying during the 1950s, not only China but also the Eastern European countries, they provide the big assistance to the North Korea, and through that the North Korea successfully recovered in the 1950s. And also in the case of South Korea, the U.S. provided the technical assistance, and that is for the economic growth. This is can be understood if we think about the ideological battlefield. As the Korea is divided into two, is North Korea and South Korea. Germany is East Germany and the West Germany. It's kind of the ideological battlefield. It's because the people in the world, they're watching the Korea and the Germany, and which part is doing better. They pay attention to that. So if South Korea and West Germany, they are doing better, in that case, people believe that the market system is better. And also it's kind of the alliance with the United States might be the better way. But if North Korea and East Germany, they're doing well, in that case, people in the world, they may believe that the socialist system is better. An alliance with the Soviet Union or the alliance with China would be better. So, because of that, in the 50s and in particular in the 1960s, the U.S. started to give the economic development assistance to the developing countries, and in particular, the Korea is one of the countries who received that kind of the development, the economic development, the assistance, and even we have think about the normalization of Japan in 1965. Actually, the Korea received a lot of things from the Japan, and also the some economic benefit from the Vietnam War. Actually, I'm very sorry and apologize to the Vietnamese people, but this is one of the very important the Korea's turning point when you think about Korea's economic growth. So, because of that, the U.S. and the developmental dictator were the paid attention to by the world, the scholars. So one of the very famous scholar whose name is the Alice Armstrong, she passed away unfortunately several years ago, but actually published a book, Asia's Next Giant. And first giant is the Japan, the next giant is South Korea. And did he pay attention to this government, bureaucrat, and business? They're the alliance. But this shows the importance of the development dictator. But this is not this is one of the conditions, but it's not easy, because how to make the developmental dictator? Is it possible to any country? I think it's not possible. If you think about the Philippines, 1960s Philippines is better than Korea. And in the 1960s, Marcos, he was very popular. And he was very similar to the Park Chung-hee. But 1970s, Marcos and the Park Chung-hee, they're different. So, not easy to make the developmental dictator or developmental state system. So, we have to find another one. It's from the internal dynamics. See, I think that this is power of the people, this people's power. So the people's power, the internal dynamics, particularly I think that the power of the localization, that is very important. But what I pay attention is actually Korean intellectuals in the 1960s, they believe that Korea should benchmark other countries. However, Western countries are not the target for the benchmark. Instead of the Western area, the Koreans in the 1950s and 60s, they believe that we have to benchmark another developing countries. So this is the table to show the Asian countries their experience of the economic development plan. So here from the Myanmar, the Ceylon, China, here Korea, South Korea, Malaya, Mongol, the Philippines, the Singapore, Taiwan, Vietnam, all of countries, they had the economic development plans, and they have the pilot institute for the development. So actually, the Philippines is one of the most countries for the Korean intellectuals at the time. Actually, this morning, one of the retired professor, very famous professor in the business school at Seoul National University, he contacted me by phone. Actually, he is very, very famous, and he was former dean of the business school at the Seoul University. But he had the MBA in Philippines in the 1960s. And actually, the Philippines was a model. And the Korean intellectuals, they would like to benchmark the Philippines, Malaysia, and India in the 1950s and 1960s. In the case of Park Chung-hee, when he designed the first Korea's economic development plan in 1962 and 1963, actually his economic advisor, whose name is Park Ki-bom, his dissertation is about the Indian economic plan. So India's the experience. So actually, when we talk about the Korea, actually it's just we just guess Korea just benchmarked the Western world, but in fact, at the beginning, the Korea's model was not the Western world. And Koreans, their thinking is that Western condition is very different from the Korean conditions. So I think that point is very, very important. We have to think about that. And the another one is localization. To learn something, but localize something to suitable to their own country. So here, ECAFE and the plan, which were the institution, where the most of the Asian developing countries they gathered in one place, and they exchange their experiences, and also they communicate about their experience. So sometimes there's some directions and some regulations of the World Bank and IMF is right. However, sometimes it's not good for the Asian countries. So they exchange their ideas how to develop our own policy, our own programs. So these kind of experiences are very, very valuable to understand the Korean economic growth, and even I think the Taiwan and the Malaysia and the Thailand, even I think the Philippines. So nowadays, I think that also it's time to have this kind of organizations. Now I think that we have another transition after the pandemic. The world is not stable, and is very high inflation. Everywhere there's very serious inflation. So how to overcome this? Actually, even the developing countries, the European countries, and the America, they could not find a way how to overcome this kind of economic instability. But I think that we have to think together. The Asia, actually, we have under the very similar conditions. Now, how to overcome this? So I think that this kind of very valuable experience should recover now. And the Korean economic growth, when you think about that, this kind of valuable experience should be paid attention to. And at the same time, we have to think about the democratization. So actually, Korea had the whole time the people's uprising to change the regime. But not only Korea, but all over the countries, they have at least once the people's power and uprising to change the regime. And even I clearly remember the Philippines, the people's uprising in 1986. I watched TV. At the time, I was the sophomore in my university days. And during watching the Philippines, the people's power, I and my friends, we believe that we could do like Philippines. And in 1987, 1 year after the Philippines, the people's power, we also is emerging another people's power. So that is very important. But more important thing is this. Actually, the most of people, they thought that the Korea's economic growth chiefly 60s and 70s. Here, this table, this is the this annual growth rate. Yes, between 1962 and 1981 is the Park Chung-hee period. Is the under the developmental dictator. Is the growth rate, economic growth rate is annually is the between 5.8 and 9.6. Of course, this is very high. If we think about in particular this period, the first oil shock, and this period, the second oil shock. But still, after the democratization, is highest the economic growth rate. And this graph also shows the 1970s is not the very dramatically the raised, but after 1987, the economic growth is very dramatically higher and higher. Of course, here 1997 did the financial crisis. We had the crisis, however, after that, even the more and more. So I think that one of the reasons this moment actually the Korea normalized the relationship with China. So China is the biggest market in the world, and that might be one of the reasons. However, at the same time, we have to think about the economic growth with the democratization. The democratic system is very important, but even some countries actually. Nowadays, Korea is facing a very similar the conditions. But think about the North Africa and the Middle East, some Middle Eastern countries, and some Asian countries, and some the Latin American countries. So those countries, they experience the people's power of rising to change and to democratize their country. However, they could not systemize the democratic something. So I think the systemization is very important. So under systemization, I think that the very sustainable economic growth could be possible. Of course, under the system of the very sustainable one, still we have to think about the instability of the world economy. It's because every country they are connected with the world economy. However, that might be more stable because this kind of democratic system. And the last one is about the Korean way. Nowadays, I really appreciate the people in the world. They really love and they like the Korean K-pop or movie, drama, even the webtoon, and even think about the Korean studies in the world. And I really appreciate the Koreanist and even the army of the BTS. I really appreciate and I respect them. But actually, when you understand that we have to think about that this is not the Korea's unique one. Many countries developed this kind of the popular culture. So when you think about the Korea's popular culture, we have to think about the internal dynamics, but at the same time we have to think about the external impact. So this is, I think, that one of the very interesting case. Actually, Koreans originally they like the singing, but actually we imported the karaoke from the outside. Actually, the Philippines is one of the famous country who had the karaoke system, and also at the same time Japan and Korea import that, and then these two things combined, and then the localized, and then the 노래방 system they start. The 노래방 system is different from the karaoke, and develop the 노래방 system and 노래방 software, and then explore that. We can see that this kind of things. Another one is Korean the mobile phone at the beginning. But actually, this is Motorola, and also the another one is Nokia, and that was the very big. But the Koreans try to make the smaller. Actually, it's not the very creative one, but the change and localize. And here, the Korean famous car is Hyundai, but also is benchmarked with Honda, but not only Honda, but other the cars. So at the beginning, I think that we have to think about how to benchmark. Sometimes how to copy. Sometimes because of copy, we have to pay the penalties. The case of Samsung, a smartphone, actually the Samsung received a penalty due to the some part is the copy of the Apple. But still, after that, this kind of the localization should be needed. And we have to think about, when we think about the Korean culture or the popular culture, we have to think about the 1970s. Until 1970s is the popularity of Hollywood movies in Korea. And even the American drama. Still, we call that the mid. Mid is American. The is the drama. And the 1980s is a Hong Kong noir film. Here is a film noir. It's very, very popular to among the young generation and even the old generation. So I was the fan of the Hong Kong noir film during the 1980s, even 1990s. And then 1990s in Korea, the Japanese popular culture was spread. So as a result, actually before 1998, the import of the Japanese popular culture was banned, prohibited in Korea. But the President Kim Dae-jung, he opened the trade with the Japan, the popular culture, and this is the one of the example. Actually, Korean movie. One of my favorite movie is The Old Boy. This is the famous one, and the Old Boy was awarded in a famous international film festival. But its original scenario is the Japanese manga. It's an old boy. And this is the original scenario. But the Koreans is localize and then make the movie and the export the scenario to Hollywood. So Hollywood made their version Old Boy. And also the India is they made another the Old Boy is issued in the Chinda. And so this is when we think about the Korean is the popular culture. Actually, the background should be understood. And as far as I remember, in the Philippines, is the lot of people they love the Korean popular culture, but still, is power of the Japanese popular culture also still is very strong. And I found that kind of things in the Thailand also. Korea is very safe. So I think that we have to understand the simultaneously the Asian popular culture, its origin, its progress, and its development. Through that, we can anticipate the future of the popular culture in Asia. And actually, there were another too many questions, but actually, I think that we always have to welcome to the world of the Korean studies to any students and any people. But actually, we need answers from the new perspective, and we we can compare something and everything in Korea is to the Japan, Taiwan, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, and so on. And through that, we can improve the students or the intellectuals, their understanding the Korea. Just the uniqueness? No. Actually, the Korean something is very different from the others. However, at the same time, we have to think about the universality, and that could improve. And that could be the more understanding on the Korean issues. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
For sharing wonderful insights on how to situate Korea in world history, and also for discussing social, political, as well as economic factors that shape Korean history, as well as sharing issues that could further develop Korean understanding. So you're still tuned into the 5th Koreanist Congress plenary lecture, and this session is now open for questions and comments. Yes, so we'll entertain question from the plenary audience. Dr. Philippine, please.
Thank you, Dr. Peggy and Mark, for your very interesting and insightful presentation. I really like it. I have questions, 3 questions, the short questions. The first of which is, you mentioned about Korea studies. I'm really curious, what do you mean by Korea studies? How do you define it on your own? The second one is, how do you characterize Korea studies in the West and in the East through the years? And finally, I'd like to know what you think about the future direction or directions of Korea studies in the West and at the same time in the East. Thank you so much.
All right, so the question of Dr. Palumbalik is, how do you define Korean studies? In your own perspective, what is Korean studies?
Oh,
And second
okay.
question, and how? The second question would be, what do you think is the future of or future direction of Korean studies in the West as well as in the East?
Okay. The Korean studies actually originally the Koreanists they believe that the Korean studies include just the history and literature and the language, and I think that that's the basic the part of the Korean studies this as well, and not only Korean studies but also the all of the international area studies, and that is I think that the very basic one. But nowadays the Korean studies is the cover all of the academic field. So the one of the example is that the nowadays very important field of the Korean studies is science and technology. So the some the scholars they are now the examine about the history of Korea's the medical as medicine or as kind of the history of the Korea's industry or Korea's agriculture or something like that. So the more and more experts they are interested in the science and technology. I think that that should be covered, and also the political economy and other social science field. Also, I think the part of the Korean studies, but not only Korean studies. As I mentioned, actually all of international studies there the cover this field. So if we have a chance to attend the annual conference of the Asian Studies Association in America, actually there are so many panels and diverse the topics, and mostly actually it's 10 years ago or 20 years ago mostly about the social issues, history issues, but nowadays actually more diverse, even to cover the science and technology or business or the company, and nowadays the second one, future. Actually, my idea is that for the Korean students, I always said that if you want to understand Korea well, you have to understand others. So through that, you have to find the universality and the peculiarity at the same time. And for the foreign students, actually, if you know Korea more or better, in that case, you have to understand the Japan, China, and other countries at the same time. So actually in this presentation, I stress the universality more. It's because I think that through that you can find the universal norm and also the specialty in the Korean studies. Both should be needed, and at the same time, I think that to increase our understanding of other culture, other civilization, and other the area studies. And under that kind of condition, I think that we can guarantee the development of the Korean studies in the future. Of course, I think the more important thing is that the power politics. Korea should be survived. If Korea would not survive, in that case, Korean studies that disappeared. The Korean studies is more Korean, but it's just a history. So I think that that is the power politics of nation. Also, it is very important condition for in the future.
Thank you very much. Do we still have other questions from the audience?
Para kita sa camera niya.
Hi, Professor Mark. I have two questions. So my first question is, you earlier mentioned about the concept of Koreanization. So I'm just wondering, Koreanization, you mentioned that during your presentation earlier. So I just want to ask, can you please expound what are the processes or the programs that are involved in the process of Koreanization? And how Koreanization impacted Korea's development? That's my first set of questions. My second question is, I personally believe that Korea is a good example on how culture can be a driver of development, or how culture can drive a country towards development. So I just want to ask if you would know any study on how Korea's culture were able to be a driver for its development, because I like to study about culture, and I think if we could learn how Korea used there's a theoretical model or a good study that could tell us or teach us how Korea's culture were able to propel Korea's development. I think it could be a good material for Filipinos, because I think many aspects of Philippine culture are not yet that harnessed or not that exploited in order to drive the growth of the Philippines. Thank you.
Actually, I can hear the first question, but I cannot hear clearly the second question. But I just answered the first one. Actually the localization. is to change something, the suitable to your own, or the changing something and then the invent the another one. So I think that why I think about this is the first of all, the so many Koreans, they learned the lot in the United States, Europe, and the Japan in the 50s and 60s. Even some they studied in the Philippines, as I mentioned during my presentation, and then they return to Korea and they try to adopt something, what they learned to the Korean policy. However, it was not working. It's because the Korea's the condition is different from the where they learned something. So, for example, a Korean the intellectual, he learned about the inflation policy in the United States, and he returned the 1970s and tried to adopt what he learned in the inflation policy in Korea, but it was different. It's because Korea's financial system was not the healthy compared to the United States at the time. So because of that, is that they have to change or revise something, and that is the localization. So think about the Korean the culture or the movie or drama. You know, is the movie drama is the structure, format, everything. I think that is very the Western style or Japanese style. Is very popular style in the Western popular culture. However, content is different. So think about its combination of both. So we inevitably the benchmark the very advanced the skills and techniques. However, the content are different, and that is more the close to the another Asian people. So that's what I'm thinking is the kind of localization or Koreanization. The second question is about the development or
The second question is, would you know any study? Let's see.
okay.
I can send
It's already on
Oh.
the private chat. Yes.
Okay. Yes. This is very, very, I think that the difficult one. Actually, not only me, but the other scholars, they thought that the Koreans' characteristic and personality was changed in the 1970s and 1980s. That was the first one. Actually, the 1970s and 1980s, actually government, they would like to make Koreans as the very modernized and civilized citizen. So there were a lot of the enlightenment, the policies, but that was really forceful one. But I think that the more important change was the after the 1990s, is because before the 1990s, actually the Koreans could not travel abroad freely. It should be allowed by the government. But after 1990s, the Koreans, we can experience the other countries, and also we the approach to the world by the internet. And then the Korean changes again. So I think that two different period in the 60s and 70s, in particular 70s, Koreans start to work hard. It's different, the working culture was started. But that was really inserted by the government. But after 1990s, it's not by the government, but by the different the environment. Koreans started know about the world. and that those two were the most representative changes in the Korean culture. And nowadays, yes, but that's not the culture industry. Okay, and budding foreign scholars just started to engage in Korean studies, so they are a fan of the Korean pop culture. How can they stay accurate and factual in their?
So, Professor, for the interest of participants here, let me read the question. So, what is your advice to budding foreign scholars who just started to engage in Korean studies because they are a fan of Korean pop culture? How can they how can they stay accurate and factual in their research? Thank you.
Okay. That's not easy. I have a very interesting case. Experience actually. I met the very famous professor at the Harvard University. Actually, he visited Korea, but at the beginning, his major was the Greek, the culture. So the Southern European culture, but he changed it. The major from the Greek culture to the Thai culture. So now he is the Thai specialist. I asked why you became the Thai specialist, and his answer is that he really loved the Thai food. So after the tasting the Thai food, he decided to change his major from the Greek to the Thai. So I think that the first step is that try to the taste the something in the Korean issues, and then the compared the what he know and the Korean something. So that is, I think, one of the strategy of the Korea Foundation when they invited the specialists from the world. So not easy to the change, but actually the try to taste them what they are interested in, and then the compare or something. So that's the reason why I stress the universality rather than the uniqueness. So sometimes uniqueness is very important, but before that, say not different from the what you know, but still they have some kind of very small the different thing. So you have to find what is different, something like this, but not easy. However, still this is very the voluntary one. We could not forcefully change the concerns.
All right. So for the interest of time, we'll end the question and answer portion. So thank you very much, everyone, for active participation. Virtual round of applause for our panel and also our plenary speaker. So now we are formally concluding the lecture of Dr. Pak. I'm Mark Ista, your moderator. See you again in other KRC programs. Kamsahamnida. Maraming salamat.